If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie'sPod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Tonight I'm talking to Jason Gillard. Jason kindly volunteered to come on the show and tell us about his service and setting up the Northern Ireland Veterans Awards after he left. So I'm really glad he's come on. Welcome to the podcast, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
And honestly, like I say to everyone, it's a bit of a cliche, but I can't do this without people coming on. And, I really appreciate it. It's just the normal 5 questions that I ask everybody, which is, where did you grow up? Why did you join the military? What was it like? Why did you leave? And what have you done since? And I think we'll have a good discussion about that after, that part of the podcast. So if you just like to crack on, just tell us where you grew up and why you joined.
Yeah, so I grew up, I was a pub brat. So my dad was RMP. Not a good way to start off. Funny enough, I had a bloke ring me up. I never already off on stories. Ring me up the other day and just say I had a job advert up in for a CPO gig, and he was like, "Oh right, yeah, just ringing up about this job. I'm moving back to Belfast. I'm ex-RMP and I've worked for CR, which is Control Risk, for 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm going to come back." And I just started off with, "Well, we didn't start off well, did we? Telling me you're RMP." I said, "But that's okay." I said, "My dad was RMP," and he went, "What's his name? I might know him." And when someone says that, I go, "Not a chance, not a chance." I went, "George Gillard," and he went, "I've not heard that name in years." He went, "I was in debt mode. I brought his son presents for Christmas. I had to drop him off." That's me. So this bloke, I didn't know, literally on the phone, random bloke, knew my dad. So anyway, so I was a pub brat, lived everywhere. Born in Salisbury Plain on the Stonehenge, literally, and then moved to Germany. A few years there, Cyprus, Northern Ireland, back to England, then back to Germany, Colchester, and my dad got out near Norwich, a place called Wharton in near Thetford. So everyone knows that Stanton training area. So I lived everywhere. I was a nomad. My mum's from Belfast, and my dad's from Bath. And then I lived everywhere, obviously being a pub brat.
So how did that affect you growing up? I mean, like making friends, schools, and like I said before, I grew up with, my kids grew up while I was in the army. And I've asked other lads and lasses who were part. I mean, I interviewed a lady months back who, she was just a pads brat. She was, she wasn't in the military. And I asked her that question, and she said, "Well, I didn't know any different." And because most of the time you're going into schools, I think we were lucky that we moved as a unit. So all the kids moved as well, and they knew. Whereas somebody like yourself would have been moving around on their own, going into a new school, starting off afresh and stuff like that. How did that affect you?
Yeah, well, I had 7 schools as a kid, and I'm an only child as well. So it had its positive, really negatives of you could say quite on your own because like you said, every 2 years, because my dad was RMP posting. So I wasn't moving as units. We weren't moving with the same kids. It made me 2 things. Okay, it made me so independent and ability to adapt, which actually in later life really benefited me well. But it did cause problems in that I never had those solid structured mates as I was growing up, and not until my dad left the army when I was 11 in Colchester, and then we moved to the school. Then it was really tough integrating with the civvy kids. I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't the coolest kid. I really, really wasn't. I was, quite awkward, a little bit of weight on, puppy fat. And it took me a long time to integrate when I went to the school. And it was all an element of bullying. All these kids had grown up in the area, they grow together. I wasn't really accepted at first, and maybe it was my personality or just the upbringing, who knows. And it wasn't until later, until I left that school and went to college, that a lad I was in school, I ended up becoming best mate. Now, we were friends, but then we become best mates as we matured. But early doors, the moving round, difficult. There's anxieties, new school every time. But like you said, you didn't know any different. And would I have wanted anything a different way, I'd say no. I mean, living in Germany, living in Northern Ireland, living in Cyprus, would I take that away? No, because it did later on in my personality and development really afford me well. Going anywhere, going the cadets. I was in the Army cadets, going in as scouts. Leaving mum and dad was not even an issue. I never had any social anxieties like you see children today, because that was my norm. I was on my own. So going away was not an alien concept. But it has its, really has its negatives, but it also had its positive, that when I went and joined the Army, it was such an easy transition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, perfect sense. I mean, I know as well with the service schools, I suppose they're geared up to, to look after and look out for kids who are moving about and coming on their own and stuff like that. I mean, like I say, my kids were quite lucky that we moved as a whole. So, with the sudden influx of kids at that school, they all knew each other. Their own little gang type of thing. They suffered when I moved. I wouldn't say suffered. They found it a bit harder to fit in once we got back to the UK on my final posting, and they went to their first civvy school basically. And I mean, my daughter was fine because she was a bit older, and we'd put her back a year as well to catch up on her exams. But my son, I don't think he found it as hard as me saying he found it hard. It wasn't a case of that. He just kept getting called posh.
Right.
Always, because northeast of England, everyone's got a strong accent. Pads brats don't tend to have an accent really because they pick them up for everywhere. So he's walked into this school with like a Middle English accent. It's got no, it's not even an accent. It's just speaking English. Everyone was like, "What the fuck are you from?" Like, you know what I mean? He was like, "Oh, my dad's in the army," type of thing. My daughter picked that accent really quick. My son still, I think he fights now. He's 28, and he doesn't want.
Yeah. Now, I think what didn't help me was, and I've only really found this out recently, being neurodiverse. So our middle child, me and my wife, we've just got her assessed for ADHD, and I was literally doing the test, going, "Yep, that's me, and that's me." And the one thing I'd say that I found difficult with moving was, as clearly I have dyslexia and ADHD, that with moving around with the service schools, you didn't get the support which would have helped me. My anxiety in that respect, I really struggled with ability to read, and I'm thinking, I'm quite a switched on lad. Why am I struggling to be able to learn and read and write and stuff like that? The maths was no drama, but a great sports. And it's only recently that I actually realised and had to really departmentalise and look at why I had those problems moving around, and service life did not help me get the support at all. To quantify and help someone who has neurodiversity, which now is quite common. We talk about it very openly. If you just say your child has got dyslexia and ADHD, you're literally, they're going to put you on the special bus. That's I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
Yeah.
It was a different time. It was a different world. It's only recently that I've come across that with one of my grandkids. We're still going through the diagnosis. It's only recently that I realised that I'm dyslexic. It took me probably 50 years to realise, and it's not when you're in the military. It's not that big a deal, as long as you can follow orders, give orders, type of thing. Everything's, a lot of things are done for you straight down the line. But you don't tend to appreciate it or understand it. I know in the latter part of my career, I was working with an RCMO, and we would look out for, people who needed dyslexia screening and stuff like that, towards their education and things. And I sent loads of people down on it, to go and get screened. Not once did I think that I was. I just thought I was shit at spelling and shit at typing. But I'm typing things now, and I read it, and and then I read it again and go, "Did I type that?" That's complete tush.
3 or 4 times. I'll read 3 or 4 times and go, right, I said that word out in my head. I typed that word, I thought, and I'm looking at a sentence, and I'm going, "Where's that word?" And I will proofread 3 or 4 times. Now, the game changer is ChatGPT, because I just copy paste, put it in ChatGPT, check grammar, bosh, then post. Game changer. Game changer. So if anyone's listening, ChatGPT, write out your nonsense, copy it into ChatGPT and say correct grammar, copy it again, and then post it, and then you're never going to ever worry about your grammar again.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm guilty of that, but when I built my website, I might have done that, and I think that the word needs to illustrate on that.
What's
Grammarly,
interesting,
Grammarly.
what's interesting is you're talking about how it was okay and acceptable in the army to be, which we'll go on to in a bit about.
Yeah.
What I'm doing now, I'm dealing with a girl from recruitment who's setting up a neurodiversity organisation to help. One thing we're looking at and potentially is what are the percentage of soldiers, airmen, navy who are neurodiverse? I guarantee it's a far higher percentage than the average population are drawn to join in the armed forces who are neurodiverse, because the attention span, the restlessness, the ability to be outdoors, active, movement, which is everything we look at in a good soldier and airman and seaman and stuff, is that ability to be out and want to be out. And that's actually one of the key features of pretty much ADHD, neurodiversity. Not all, obviously, because we're not going to brush one thing and say that's it at all. But there's going to be a high proportion of service who are neurodiverse. It's just the nature of the job seems to attract that individual, and we're trying to help guys, because I look at it as a superpower now. People always going to me, Jay, are you wired to the max? And it's just my standard movement behavior levels of what I go at, and and I can do that, go to sleep, wake up, do it again, and it's not like a tiring sensation. Even sometimes you do, but it's an ability to keep going, which is it's something I have that some other people are quite lethargic and unmotivated. I don't have that problem.
That's me. That's me. Christ. Anyway, we're getting a bit off topic here. Right. So what made you join the military then? Apart from it's probably all you knew, really.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I saw my dad. Obviously, I was like, even though that's another conversation. That 1980s chuckle brother, look, typical R&P. Tash looked like a chuckle brother.
Yeah.
Hard nose, his dad. Literally, you thought I had no love for you, or but growing up, it's just all I wanted to be. I didn't excel at school. I loved sport. In that world, just wanted to be a soldier. It was literally, there was no plan B. There was no nothing. It was did college, went to school, didn't get the grades because I didn't put the effort in. Let's be honest. Let's not pretend I didn't get the grades I deserved. I got the grades I deserved. I didn't.
Yeah.
I once tried to in DIY. I was going to produce a football stadium. I just brought my Sabutio stadium and tried to pass it off. This is the effort level I was putting in, and he was like, "Yeah, nah." And it was funny because he was so my DIY teacher was ex-Navy, and it was no word of a lie. His last name was Bates, so Master Bates. So I didn't put the effort in, so I didn't get the grades I deserved. I got the grades I deserved, and then I went to college and carried on because my dad, he didn't really want me to join the army. He didn't want me to do it. He was straight away, he was going, "You're going to join? No, I want you to go and get an education. I want to go and get this, that, the other." And so I went to college, retook some of my grades, did improve them. Then I started a sports science course. Again, in principle, I looked in my head and went, "Oh, I want to do that," but I didn't. I did that because my dad would, it's something you look at it and go, "Oh, you're doing a sports BTEC National Diploma in Sports Science." And then it got to a point where I wasn't turning up, and then my dad found out, and then I was like, "Yeah, I'm not wanting to be there." Now I enjoyed playing the rugby, went and played rugby every week, and I said, "Look, my goal is I want to join the army." So I got a job. I actually got a job where Mum and Dad worked in Thetford. It was a factory. Worst mistake ever. Do not work in a place with your mum and dad. I ended up getting put on the line with my mum, and my mum is from Belfast. Big Shankill, and honestly, that was hell. Working on this line, doing this thing with mum. Then I moved around to become a line boy. And anyway, went to join. I was in a bus crash though, going to college. I didn't think that would have any effect down the road. So I went to first time, went to tip up selection, got to go through, went to the careers Norwich and went to go to Purbright and didn't even get past the medical. It says here you've been in a bus crash with a back injury. I said, "Yeah, just hurt my back, but I'm grand." Now this is less than a year. So I got rejected. So I had to go back absolutely wounded, gutted, couldn't join. So I had to wait for a period of time, then reapplied, and then went down, smashed it, come first on the mile and a half, come first on the bleep test, got grilled. I remember on my selection because my dad was because they look and see your dad's army. Getting asked questions I had no idea about. I was like, I don't have no idea this, but they were going to be your dad's in. I went, and anyway, and I was in the Army Cadets, so I loved it as well. So finally got in at the second attempt. So why I joined was because my dad was in. It's all I knew and all I wanted. And it was never like, oh, this is my last chance. This to me was what I wanted to do, and all I wanted to do.
No, that's fair enough. My story was that I had two brothers in the army, and I think everyone just expected me to join, so I did. Yeah. You know, and I'm from Hartlepool in the mid-80s. There was nothing there. You know, I'd signed me oath of allegiance and had me, you know, the date returning update before I did my last exam. You know, right. I turned up and done my last exam. I could have just not bothered. I'm as well not the grades I got. But yeah, you're right about that. The grades you deserve, not what you think you deserve. Yeah, you put the effort in. When I look back at mine, I was like, yeah, they're a bit shit. You know, I'm pretty sure I'm cleverer than that at some point. So what did you pick? What unit did you pick to join? What mob?
So, right, I can't believe we're going to admit this on social media. I was going to go RMP.
You know what? I've interviewed guys who were in the RMP, and like I said to him, you know, we all have this like idea of what it's like being out, you know, joining the monkeys, and he was like, yeah, and some of it is, and you know, the laugh we had about it was at the time. He was an instructor down at Chichester, and when their guys in training got in the shit, they couldn't jail them, right? Because they haven't got a jail. So they used to send them. I was in the artillery, and we were at Thorney Island. So they used to send them down to us to get jailed. So, and we, you know, the RPs would be like, "Yeah, we're getting another one in," and they'd fucking rag them. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, you're going to do this to someone later. You're getting it now.
Yeah.
You know, I never really had anything to deal with the RMPs. But let's not go into that one. You know, I don't want to, you know, admit things on camera. But you know, I've had nothing to do with them. It's just that. It's just a bit of banter, a bit of rivalry, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Well, I didn't join the RMP. So I ended up joining the glorious Royal Corps Signals. At the time, it was quite a new trade because they got rid of a thing called RTG and TGs, data telegraphy, or the DTG was data telegraphist. So I become what was the new radio systems operator. So become what was known as an RS op. And I joined in. Once I got in, I was over 18 when I joined because of the rejection of the back injury. And I joined 2000, June 26th, 2000. Okay. Glorious day for the Corps because 2 days later was their anniversary. And yeah, I went through Basenbourne, then straight on to Blandford to do your RS course, which takes about a year of bullshit, ironing your woolly jumpers, starching them, lightweights. I mean, lads joining now won't even know what lightweights are or woolly jumpers or.
I miss. I think they look a lot smarter, mate. To be honest.
But yeah, so I had a great time. It was a horrible time, but I had a great time. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I could have bypassed basic training because of the cadets. I was in 5 years, and I actually went and trained. I love basic training. It wasn't difficult. It was an easy time, great time. Could have bypassed it if I'm honest. Only learned a few things. Then went to Blandford, did trade training. Obviously, that was an eye opener. Learning how to use Klansman, because all that, you know, good stuff. Great place, Blandford. Well, the camp's awful. The nightlife great. There used to have a nightclub called the G Spot down in Blandford, and it was 12 quid to get in. Bottomless glass. Had some great times there. Absolute great, awful great times. And then my first posting. So this was crazy. I got posted to 21 Signal Regiment. You know, I was seeing a girl at the time, split up with me in Blandford, as usual do. And I got posted to 21 Sigs because I was an Army under-20 rugby player. So I got into the Army scene with rugby and got posted to 21 Sigs, which is near Cologne, Bath. So got there. But the day I turned up was the 12th of September 2001, the day after 9/11.
Everything had changed.
When I say coming into a world that was unrecognisable, was unbelievable. Literally turned up the guard room, you know, got my first car because I passed my driving test at Blandford and couldn't drive. with all everything in there, and literally 20 bods in the guard room, webbing on, rifle. Because this one's got me. They hit the Twin Towers, so the next hit was going to be Cologne in Bath.
Hey, you never know.
We've got the trade centres. Let's hit those boys in Bath. Come on. But anyway, so we tipped up there, and I was like, and they were like, right, here's your room. I was putting them above the med centre in transit accommodation. Turned up to the unit next day. World gone wild. Literally had gone. If that hadn't happened, turned up 2 days earlier. Different setup. Turned up that day was something you'll never forget. And obviously, the day I remember watching at home, seeing the Twin Towers hit and going, oh, I'm sure there's planes I'm meant to do that. And we got to there, and it was just a whirlwind preparing to go to Afghan, because that was it. Remember, there was exercise South Syria on. I don't remember that was in Oman. It was the biggest exercise they'd done in years. So it was rear party pretty much at there as well, because most of the people were away. And 21 SIGs was the air support for the Chinooks and the Pumas. So we used to do the communications with the RAF and stuff like that. And tipping up there, and going, right, within a month, they start giving briefs. We're going to get ready for Afghan. You need to get that. And they started going down to the TA units to take their debts off them, Land Rovers and radios, to bring and prepare them to ready deploy, start prepping to go to Afghan. And I was like, obviously, 19 years old, joined the army because I wanted to see the world, getting told we're preparing to go to Afghanistan. I literally thought, this is everything I've ever, wanted. I could never stand anyone who joined and went, I don't really want to go anywhere. And you're like, what the fuck did you join for? And especially as everything was dying down. Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement had happened 3 or 4 years before. Kosovo and Bosnia was starting to wind down. There was nothing on the horizon. And then, boom, this happened. I was like, unbelievable. We're getting ready. A different world.
No, I remember the day it happened. We'd gone into work and somebody had said, someone's just done a big bomb in New York. We were like, what the fuck are you on about? Kind of ignored what they said. And when everyone went home at lunchtime, obviously turned the tellies on. And I don't think anybody went back to work in the afternoon. No. Literally, I rocked up about 3 or 4 o'clock and the camp was dead. Everyone was just like, what the fuck's happened? Because, it was like, it's all right in hindsight saying that, oh, yeah, the world changed and everything. But it fucking did. A lot of things changed. They achieved their goal and they probably fucked the rest of the world up straight away. Because we were just everyone was in shock, really.
Yeah, well, I don't keep focus. Do you know
right.
what was interesting is George Bush. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. George Bush could walk into the US Senate and ask to do. He could have said, "I want to take Doris down in Venezuela and I want to Apache her, you name it." And they would have gone, done. He had the power to do anything. Right, let's go to Iraq. Let's put in Afghanistan. I'm not saying he instigated, but I'm just saying it did give him the ability to do what everyone, it was an interesting time, and everything changed for us. I think that was the catalyst to change the whole role of the army. If anything, it kick-started what needed to happen with equipment, procurement, better equipment, everything. That was the start of the catalyst to now.
But it's still. Now they are. Yeah, they've got the gear, but it still took years to start getting the kit. Fucking ridiculous. You're right. I went to Bosnia in '95, right? And they said, oh, it's warm weather, so you'd have to take junglies with you. And we were like, right, okay. And it was Combat 95 was just coming in, so they give us like prototype Combat 95 stuff, and it just fell apart. And we said, well, what about cold weather gear? Because it's going to get cold. Bosnia gets cold. And we went, oh, don't worry about that. Yeah, we'll get you it. People were having to buy their own stuff. We got issued cold weather gear after we'd been on Mount Igman for 2 months. It's about minus 16 every day. We're wearing our like civic clothes underneath the uniform, trying to keep warm, type of thing. It's fucking ridiculous. And it still took years for it to kick in. Even I agree, it does. It was a catalyst, but still going out. I went out in Telic, shit body armor.
Yeah.
Fucking, you know what I mean? Half was dressed in green, half was dressed in desert. It's just it is what it is. You can't change the past. I mean, luckily, I hope they've got it better now for the kit. I've been out 12 years, so I don't really know. I can't really comment on that. Anybody who's listening, please leave a comment below. But yeah, so that was a shock for you to end up at your unit like that. It
Unbelievable.
must have been, it must have been quite an eye opener, to say the least. And how did you react to that? How did you fit in?
Again, I actually felt it was like going back to school in a way. When you first unit, it's like, especially as I look quite young, but I was actually, how old was it? Was I about coming up to 20 at the time? So I wasn't a young lad who joined at 17, got there, and 3 years is a big difference at that age, 17 to 20. Yeah, still immature now at 43. But,
56 going on 7.
Yeah, it was. I would say it was. I was dealing with the back end of the hard and nasty corporals and lance corporals, should we say, that were in the army. The beginning of 2000. That was probably the last time of the. You know what I mean, and everyone who's going knows what. So literally looking at you, going, what the fuck are you looking at, Gillard? And having to prove yourself. I mean, the lads won't have to do that now. It's not. It's a change in a good way, and ultimately bad way.
Yeah.
I still think you need a couple of good enforcers. In the right way. Strong leader.
Robust, I think the word is robust. It might have been mentioned on my Sierra a couple of times.
There was a great line on my Sierra. We'll go into that later. But so it was a difficult time. It was just one of those times to adapt. My troop staffy, I wanted to be a PTI, so they turned up, and then as it died down, coming up to Christmas, because remember that of September coming up, we were getting told, right, you'll be on standby, and ultimately, as nowhere near as many people are. It was 16 Air Assault went out on New Year's Eve, I remember. I think because one of my mates, he rang me up. He went, Jay, H. Harrison, his name was. He was a retrade from the RLC, and he became an RSOP, and he was in the trade course I was on. He then went to 216, our airborne unit, and he went, yeah, we're flying to Kabul. We're going tonight. And it was his birthday. So I remember that, and then it died down a little bit. The unit, you come after Christmas. Oh, we don't know if who's coming, who might be deploying, might be, and I think it was something like maybe one det out of at least a whole squadron on standby. So it didn't materialise how we thought it was going to be. So then started getting to normal unit life, as a sprog. But I wanted to be a PTI, and I remember putting in my application every month, and it just got rejected by my staffy. Every time said no, and the sergeant major didn't like me at Night Harris. It was it was a prop because I remember he did the junior seniors, and I passed the ball and he kept running at me, and luckily I could sidestep him because he was a prop and I was playing scrum half, even though I was either a fly half or fullback, and I thought, all right, he doesn't really like me, does he? Tried to twat me off the ball, and then I offended one of the old school hard sergeants. Ian Francis, he was like, "Who's a sprog?" When we were playing some sport in for PT, go and tell him to get back. And he was looking at me, going, "How could you even speak to me?" So I offended him. I did one of these things like, on one of these people, I didn't mean to offend, but I just seemed to maybe come across a little bit cocky. So yeah. And then I subsequently, in the early days, met my first wife, who was a course swimmer. She was actually there. She was at 36, another unit. I ended up not only spending a year at my first posting, and ended up getting posted in Northern Ireland so we could be together. And then so that was quite a baptism of fire, going, quite an early posting. I didn't complete my 3-year posting in Siggy. I got posted early to go to Northern Ireland, to come across, do Op Banner, which wasn't obviously the banner of the 80s, 90s, 70s that my dad and others did. But obviously it was still had its restrictions on what you could do in 2002. So I went across to 39 Imp Brigade in Lisbon. Brilliant, absolute brilliant post. Northern Ireland was a great posting. I remember my first staffy, who I saw last year for the first time at my awards, Eddie Cochran, and I remember what he said. I know you said at the beginning of this, make sure you say everything that's truthful. And no, and I remember him walking in. I was a young Siggy, and Gemma, who was married, was pregnant at the time. I know, one of those ones we met early, got had a kid early, and he said to me, I just got posted in fear. Remember you come online, you used to have to send what clothes you're going to be wearing when you get out of the plane and get met and stuff like that. And he was like, so it was first words to me. I call you in to cover a shift, and you tell me you can't come in because you've got your kid. I'll have you posted at a theatre. And as a young figure, I just went, yes, stuff. And years later, I was like, I wish he said that to me when I was a full screw, because I would have gone, is that right? Stuff, just let me go and get the welfare officer just so we can hear you say that. No, just say it again. No, say what you said again, and I would have gone, or I would have just gone, yeah, whatever, because the stuff he couldn't kick me out of theatre. Jesus,
No,
man.
of course.
No, yeah, I had a baptism fire 3.9, and so I ended up getting on my PTIs. So I went and did one of the last class 3 ones. And Northern Ireland, they were like, yeah, we need a PTI because everyone's on shift, everyone's here away leave, and wait on that. Brilliant course. Aldershot in the summer, absolutely brilliant course. Running around Queen's Avenue like a headless chicken. Doing everything I loved. So did my PTIs, become one of God's children. Got the snake belt of power. So that was brilliant. That was a great post in 3.9. So anyway, I then career going on, got post, did my 2 years in Northern Ireland, which was great. Honestly, couldn't you? Anyone? It's funny. Everyone who did Northern Ireland, you must speak to them. They all say loved Northern Ireland, even though you know the implications of what it had. It's just something about or coming top banner. And then I went to Nuneaton 30 Signal Regiment. I come off the Lance Corporal board. Went there.
Gamecock Barracks.
Gamecock Barracks, yes, because that used to be
yes, know it well.
Unit, or was that
There was Junior Leaders Regiment, Royal Artillery.
Yes. So
know that place very well.
What, running around the windbreaks?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I had again. It's a crack. It's 36 there. You was known as the Globetrotting Regiment. So that was a satellite.com. That's where guys wanted to go because they'll go all over the world. Like end up working in the gym there and had a brilliant sergeant major, Shaggy Kumasai, Shaggy Philpott. So if anyone's listening to know Shaggy, what a legend of a bloke, Kumasai. He was a brilliant bloke. But talk about shit dits, okay, and stories. We got a new Kumasai. Her name was Brenda Berry. Okay, and this was my first experience of, shall we say, what I thought was gender unfair treatment. So we had this trainee Siggy in to become a PTI. Name was Lou Roberts. Absolute pile of shit. All right, should never have been there. Couldn't do 10 good press ups, let alone 50 to pass the PTI's course. But anyway, she went on a run. One of the lads said, "Oh, Jay, go and check on the run." So you remember Gamecock? If you remember where the front entrance of the camp is, and you go across where the assault course, and you go out to these fire hangers, and it loops round to bring you back round the. We call it the 501, but it was the control tower just on the windbreaks. So you run along round there, and it brings you loops a mile and a half. Anyway, you could cut out the hangers at the end. There's a road that runs parallel with them. So I come out, and guess what I catch? On the mile and a half route, meant to be running with the remedials, doing a practice mile and a half route, was Lou Roberts cutting out the route, cutting it. Saw, I was like, that is shocking. So I just went back, and I rung the Kumasai, who was off injured. She was off injured at the time. I was like, Q, I just found Sig Roberts cheating. And she was like, what do you mean cheating? I said, cutting the route. And she went, why were you there? I said, Jonesy, who was standing as the Jim 2AC, said, Jake, you go down and have a look. So I did. And she said, I think what you've done's worse. She said, did you tell her you were going to be there? I said, no, Q. Well, I didn't. I didn't know I had to. But she went, well, I don't think you should have done that. I can live with her cheating. And I was like, what? You can live with her cheating? So anyway, Roberts comes in and goes, the Q's wrong me. She wants to see me. She wants me to go to her house. And I was like, right, I'll tell you why. And I said, come outside. So he didn't do it in front of everyone. I said, stand there. Said, I'm going to take the reason why you're going to see the Q is the Brecon hand come out, by the way.
I still do that at work.
Yeah, you're going to see the Q because I caught you cheating. And she started gobbing off at me, and she's signaling I was Lance Corporal and I was, PTI. And I said, look, I don't think you fucking understand this. This isn't a two-way conversation. She went, I don't give a shit. What do you think? And I was like, fucking Sig Roberts, she jogged off. She went, I don't give a fuck. She then rung the Q up and said whatever. And then I had another telephone call from the Kumasai having a go at me. Having an absolute go at me, she went, who can I believe? And I said, well, I'm a trainee. She's a trainee, a Sigma. I'm the Lance Corporal who's not a trainee. I said, who do you think you should believe? Well, let's just say she didn't believe me. I was kicked out of the gym, back to the squadron. Okay. She never passed her PTIs because if she went down a pub right, she would have failed. End up getting out of the gym, and then I ended up having a bit of a shitty time actually in the squadron when I went back. Fell out with the sergeant major. I'm sounding there's a lot of falling outs of me here, but honestly, it wasn't me. So anyway, so come to the 2 years there, and Gemma, who got married to the wife at the time, she ended up getting promoted to sergeant. So we ended up getting posted to 3 div. Now that was an interesting time. I was Lance Corporal, she was a sergeant. How does the mess work?
I was going to say, yeah. Who invites you?
Well, that was an interesting one. So in most signal regiments, there is no corporal's mess. Something they did try to get at 36, but never took on. And I know a lot of regiments have corporal's messes and stuff like that, but the signals they never used to ever have corporal's messes. Didn't really have it. Maybe one regiment might have it, but general 3div didn't have one. First mess do applies to the RSM. And I'm trying to think who the RSM was at the time at 3div. Anyway, gets told it should be all right, and then gets a letter rejecting me. So couldn't come to the first, wouldn't accept me into the mess as a Lance Corporal. And normally, okay, I understand why, if I'm honest. I understand why. Then he left, he got his commission, and then a top bloke come in, Matt Eastman, RSM. But he was a sergeant major at my last unit. Instantly knew me, instantly went straight away, you can come in the mess anytime, as long as you ask permission, your wife, blah, blah, blah. Not a problem. Absolutely not a problem. Go in the mess. And it was a great time. But this is where my story gets in the army starts taking a complete branched off. I'm going to be quite pleasant to my ex-wife, I should say, because she served. So anyway, we went to Iraq. So no, tell a lie. So I went on SFC selection to Special Forces Communicator 264 186, the Signals Regiment at Hereford. I went on the selection, and on it, 2 weeks in, past the fan dance and all that, I get told, she rings me and goes, Jay, I'm deploying to Iraq. And we had a daughter at the time, Tegan. And I was like, right. And it honestly played in my head. Next couple of days on the hills, anyone who's done, do the hills for selection stuff, they talk about them, what goes through your head, the physicality is hard enough, let alone you have to have no baggage. Blokes who go on there with no baggage, no kids, honestly, it's a lot easier, I generally think. And in my head, in the end, I had to go up to the staff and go, look, I'm going to have to V-dub here. And they were like, why, Jay? You've been a great man in the respect of we've not had to discipline you or say your times are rubbish or you've not been right at the front being standing out and going, because you know what they say, the nail that sticks out the most gets hit first. So I had the V-dub. They didn't count it as a V-dub because of the reasons, because of obviously my wife. So I then go back, and then I end up getting roped into deploy. Now that was quite a touchy thing because we were both married, deploying with a child. So we had to obviously put an arrangement for Tegan, her daughter, to go to her mum and dad, the grandparents. But she deployed a couple of months ahead of me. I ended up getting augmented to ECM Squadron, which is in Lisbon, Northern Ireland. If anyone's listening, they're the old Romeo troop from Northern Ireland days, the Ghostbusters. So then I went across to Northern Ireland. She deployed. I ended up doing my CLM before Christmas, before I was deploying, to go to Northern Ireland to train up, to then go to theatre. So I come 3 months after. Went out to theatre. We're in Iraq together for 3 months. Then she come back early. And then the day I walked back in from Iraq, they come in the house, is the day we split up. Because she went, I'm flying back, she broke into my Facebook, and I had been a weak man, and I had cheated on her over Christmas. So I had gone home for the first time in 8 years. Shouldn't have done that. Should have left. Gemma wasn't the right person for me. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to, even the podcast, I'm not going to, at the end of the day, we've got a child together. What happened between us is between us in that respect. But I should have split up. I shouldn't have done what I'd done. So she just went, who's this? And it was a message saying what I'd done. I said, look, we're going to stop this. I shouldn't have done this. Let's put it to bed. I'm a married man. And here's the funny thing, though. My mum was there was at the house to help with childcare. And I was up half hour later to go to Northern Ireland to do my week's decompression with the unit. So my mum had to stay there, and fucking half to Northern Ireland. So I didn't have to deal with it. But it was the catalyst of the best thing that ever happened to me, if I'm honest.
Right.
Because that wasn't right. We weren't right. That wasn't a relationship. It was a toxic, really toxic. I didn't do things in my career because she manipulated me to stop me doing. I was a career soldier. I was, wanted to be, definitely a good, very high standard of soldier, and wanted to go off and go up to RSM, all that.
I mean, I've not experienced being, I was married in the army, not married to a soldier. I'd
Yeah.
imagine that's been quite hard, especially being in the same unit.
Yeah, well, we're split.
Would people think that you're going to get preferential treatment, especially because she was 2 ranks ahead of you and stuff like this, and blah blah blah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Well,
suppose in
I'd
the
come up.
artillery it was different. There was less women, especially at the time.
Well, the signals and
So,
I mean, between that, I'd come off because I was a full screw, but when I went to Iraq, so I'd come off full
yeah.
screw board. So, it's catching, and so I come back, and we were still in the same unit. We were split up. I moved into the block. Started enjoying myself. Went snowboarding, which you'd never let me do. I remember going out, and I was like, trying to have some mediation. And I went to counselling, marriage counselling. The best thing I ever did. I learned so much in that one session that helped me for the rest of my life understand relationship, understand how there's a parent, adult, child relationship. It was brilliant. I actually thought it was brilliant. It was really good. I learned from it. She didn't. She just, all she liked was when they said the shit things I was rubbish at. But anything that was against her, that was a load of rubbish, which I was like, oh no, I think it's... Anyway, so I learned loads. So I saw the welfare officer, and we sat down to talk about, being sensible. And I just was like, after we had that, I went to the welfare officer and I sat down and I went, I need posted out of here. I cannot sit in Bulford. This is not right. This is toxic. We can't be in the same unit. Now, we were different squadrons, HQ, and I was 206 Signal Squadron. But I'd always, we'd always bump in. I was taking CO's PT and stuff. I just I said, could I have a post into ECM Squadron? Now, ECM Squadron with Iraq and Afghanistan was only a squadron, but covering 2 theatres. So they needed every Tom, Dick and Harry they get. And because I'd done the tour with them, I just said, could I get pushed there? And the welfare officer says, I know the Sergeant Major. Next morning, I had my posting order to go to ECM Squadron, Northern Ireland. So I was like, brilliant, fantastic. I get a telephone call literally 2 days later saying, right, you'll be deploying to Afghanistan at this date. I thought this was the best. So I'd only just done Iraq. 6 months later, going Afghan, I thought, yes, that's brilliant. Really could not wait. Got across to Northern Ireland, did pre-deployment training, Bosch, and out for Herrick 9/10. Shitballs, Herrick 10. I don't know if you've had anyone on talk about, obviously, all the Herricks, kinetic, for so different reasons. Obviously, you got the early Herricks where they had no kit, but Herrick 10, I mean, that's, well, the Pang Shalang, that was obviously when we had the most casualties and deaths. 40 Reg so they were actually at Lisbon. So 19 Light.
That's right, yeah.
19 Light was the brigade for that tour, and 40 Reg, who are now disbanded, were at Lisbon. And I went out into that tour and Herrick, and this is everything. This was real. To me, Iraq was a hot Northern Ireland. For the kinetic, the way it was. Obviously, I know we had snatches.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
It was a urban warfare trying to deal with disgruntled Republicans, who just happened to be Iraqis. Whereas Afghanistan was more soldiering to me. That was how I could describe it. I thought that was more soldiering. The only way to describe it. So going to Herrick 10, attached to the Danish for 6 weeks in a place called Armadillo. Because we had ECM equipment attached to them, so we had to have someone permanently, even though they weren't part of Five Eyes, we had to have someone who was always on theatre then. And my routine was pretty much wake up, breakfast, go to gym, help out the radio, maybe go and do a patrol here and then I'd go to gym again. It wasn't a gym, but it was good. It was the best 6 weeks ever. Brilliant. Really just got to pick and choose. Then I went on R&R, got dumped. I was seeing an air hostess at the time. And then come back and went to Musakala. I hated Musakala. What an awful time. That was where the Fusiliers were there. Had an absolute terrible time. It was just a shithole. It was horrible. I know they're not nice, but some places are. I mean, it's beautiful to look at, but then there was an incident where someone got injured in one of the ATO teams, and they would have what was called a bleep. They would have an ECM on retainer. Now, that equipment is different to what the standardized force protection kit you might have had in Iraq and stuff like that. Okay. Now, you have to have a license. Even though we're in a theatre and you have to have done their course, you can't. And this bloke had this idea that I could just go into that team. And I said, look, I'm not allowed to. I tried to explain to him. I ended up getting pulled out of Musikala, made up some that I said I was being a problem. I wish I'd done that earlier. If I knew that was a sketch, I would have gone, yeah, I've been a right problem. So get pulled out, go to Kandahar, have another. That was an absolute gift, a tour. But that's when Panchalan kicked off. So we were through with that, supporting that. And then obviously ended toured. Went and did some milk, went and did my skill at arms. Love that. What another great course that was. Anyone, done this, the old skill at arms, a 6 weeks one, not this new one, because they do like modules now, I believe. A 2-week course. They're everywhere. Absolutely brilliant course. But I did the crow bag thing on the course, and I talk about shit did. I on the of all courses, we had a shooting day, range competition, and had to do, do your zeroing and guess who fires automatic. When you do it and you're like, did I just do that? Please say it wasn't me and it was someone else. Of all places, the skill at arms course. Yeah. I was like, I have a habit of this because I'm a PTI. We went back for lunch and I had thought I'd do 5 winks on the bed and then woke up and everyone was gone. And I had to tiptoe in the fox lines like this, right? Didn't even know it was gone, but I went up to the instructor, said, oh, staff, sorry, I slept in. And I got extras. If I said nothing, never even known I was missing. And let me tell you, thinking you're going to get punishments at the PT school is one of the scariest things in your life, because you think, what you just think you're going to be running around for the rest of your life around this course. Anyway, so went and did my skill arms, and then I went into training wing. This is where my career gets really interesting. Well, might not be interesting to some people. They might be going, that's boring as fuck. So I went in the middle training wing. So we obviously in Northern Ireland, the squadron just rotates the guys. There's no squadron replaces it. So you just rotate between guys. No. Yeah. So every 6 weeks, we would go to McGilligan for 2 weeks and have to make a Northern Ireland village seem like Afghan. Not a chance. So I've obviously rage quals. We're doing that. Hi, Ellie. One of my doors. So we take him up there. This is where I'm pushing for. I know I'm pushing for the top full screw in the squadron, very active squadron. I'm obviously qualled up to the max. I'm in the training wing. I've been on all the tours, and we're doing a pre-deployment training. And we decided to use is the 14mm mini flares as RPGs. Okay,
right.
So I'm there, and we fire them, and that's to stimulate the FOB is under attack from RPGs. Okay, and so anyway, we're just going to make sure put you on. The battery doesn't die. There we go. Got you. So we fire them, and I did a schoolboy rookie mistake. It's coming to sound like a mong here. I don't put it back. I don't put it back. The last one I don't fire. I don't put it back in the the green container that you put the flares in. I put it back in my windproof SAS smock. Anyway, so the serial's finished. We go back into the hut with all the lasses doing the training, and we're there. And I'm in the hut just chatting to them, and I feel the striker. Remember the striker, and you flick it, and I feel it in my pocket, and I just flick it, and all of a sudden, in this hut, we just hear this boom. We're like, what the fuck? And I'm looking round, and behind me is the chair on fire, and I'm going, what the? Everyone thought it was a thunder flash to start the next serial, and I'm going. And then I look in my pocket, and it's got a hole in it, and I'm going. How's that on fire? And how's my pocket got a hole in it? What's going on here? So we put out the fire on the chair, and then we go into the next room, and this girl, Emily Porter, she's a foreman, she's a staff sergeant. I'm a full screw, and she's rubbing her leg, and I went, what happened? She went, it hit me in the leg. So what happened is it flicked it, fired, went out of my pocket, hit her leg, bounced off her leg, bounced off the wall, and it into the chair to set it on fire in this hut. So if anyone's listening in McGilligan, the little village hut on the other side of not where the Rangers are, the other side of McGilligan, there's that wee farmhouse. Everyone will know it. This is on fire. And I'm going, oh, you okay? You okay? And she was like, her legs, she said, she started crying. And I was like, right. I raced back to McGilligan camp to get some bag of peas. We're coming down and put this bag of peas on her legs. And Matt Gill, who's the training wing sergeant, went, Jay, I'm gonna have to suspend you. And I said, look, okay, not a problem. You know, you need when there's an element, an ND, you need to ring Clate. There's an incident, you need to get over it. And so I went away and I quickly wrote a statement. And to this day, I wrote that I was pulling it out to start the next serial, and it caught in my pocket. So I was not an ND because I meant to do it. Okay, it just got caught. All right, but there was some gobshites on it. All right. So anyway, he gets a call. He gets a call from Clay. Yeah, whatever. Good. He can go back on the exercise. Now I went back on the exercise, and I felt about that small. So if anyone's listening, it's the size of my penis, right? Right. I felt tiny because I'm an instructor. I'm the know-it-all. I'm the, meant to be the this, that, ever. And he didn't. In a bit, babe.
All hell's breaking loose.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But anyway, Sergeant Major news. The OC, brilliant bloke, Billy Bingham, ex-Hereford. And not the Billy Bingham from Who Dares Wins, it's a Signals Billy Bingham. And anyway, he basically calls me in, and he says they marched in, the others. He could come in, not to ask me what happened, to tell me what had happened. That at ND, I disgraced the squadron. That I thought I was drink driving and I ran over his child, and then I decided to reverse back over his child in case I missed, because that's how he was making me feel. He's going, "You've ND'd, you've just right." It goes, "We're going to have an investigation now," which I replied. I said, "Why, sir?" And he went, "What do you mean, why?" I went, "Well, again, you've already told me I'm guilty, sir, so why do we need an investigation? Get the fuck out of my office, get that." So I did march off, and Sai is a sergeant major. I'm friends with now. He had to march me out, and so that honestly, my career. So I was getting called in to say, right. So the way ECM squadron worked is they were part of 10 Signal Regiment. The headquarters was in Corsham, but we were over in Northern Ireland. So I get told the sergeant, the RSM's going to come over and see you about this. It's like, right, come over, had words, told me I'd get treated right. I then get pulled in and go, right, the regiment want you to know that they're going to do this by the book. And I said, well, surely they always do it by the book, don't they, sir? Why am I getting told that? And I realised when I'm going to get effed over it. And he was like, no, you're not. I then get called in again. Right, read that. Good news, bad news. I said, all right, tell us, what is it? And he went, good news, you're not getting major ag guy and you're not getting summary dealing. I was like, that's the good news. Yeah. So what's the bad news? He went, read that. And it said, anyone who's injured in an ND goes to court martial. And I went, really? We're going to court martial, sir? And I said, are we calling a bruise an injury, sir? And he was going, yes. I said, okay, then everyone who comes off exercise should go sick. Why? I said, because they've got bruises all over their knees from having a leopard crawl and monkey run and jumping down on ditches. So surely everyone's injured. And he was like, no. I said, so at that point, I went, right, can't call an ND. I said, why? I said, sir, the striker has not been checked by the REME to prove that it was error in drill, not error of drill. Sorry, error of drill, not error in drill. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, you have to prove that striker was working fine before you can charge me, because you have to prove that it was my fault. Oh, we don't have to do this. I think you'll find you have to do that from anything from an AS90 down to this. Okay. Yeah. Now, there was no chance of that ever happening because I stole it and took it with me. And I told him I threw it back in with the other 13. Next day, I get a telephone call because from Army League, you are a lucky boy. I said, what? It's been thrown out. I said, why is it right? He goes, but not why you think. I said, it's been thrown out because your statement is self-mitigates. Because you can't self-mitigate in your own personal statement. And because the RMPs didn't take a statement, you cannot be charged. And I was like, Bucksy, and I went, but you're still getting minor agite. And I went, why? I went, because we only need to believe you did it to minor agite you. Now that's another story, a funny story, but I won't go into that one anyway. So I did this, and then I went on another tour. Then my SGR come through. They'd used it against me. They wrote on my SGR. They didn't write the incident, but they wrote, I could come across a little bit arrogant. So that was my chances of promotion. So then I'm getting to a critical part of my career, a 12-year point, and at this end of this tour, I get sent to OPTAG because what I did with Herrick 1314 with the RSOI package, I end up going to OPTAG as an acting sergeant to teach at OPTAG. Then I get my SGR, and I wanted top full screw in the regiment, acting sergeant, called up, and I come 7th in the regiment, which for a regiment of 100 full screws, that's still decent, but it wasn't good enough for me. I was at that point I wanted to be going on, so I had to make a choice at the time, and I went, right, I've not got what I wanted. I'm going to sign off. But just before I was about to do it, I got a posting order to go to Purbright as phase 1 instructor. I signed off, and then they were still trying to post me to Purbright signed off. And I was ringing up Purbright to speak to I was actually going into the rehab squadrons. Again, it's a complete waste of my talents, I'm honest. I rung up the 2IC, and he actually he thought I was treating me like I was an absolute dick, when I was just trying to say to him, sir, my posting, there's no point in posting me, I've signed off. Because I'd met just before Herrick 13 my wife, my now future wife. I won't talk about getting 8 years to get divorced. That's another thing. That was ridiculous. But I met Cecily in Northern Ireland. So I come back, did the tour, went to obviously Afghan. Come back, did the attachment to OPTAG, and then I really liked this girl, and I went, do you know what? I said, there's more to the army, and I wasn't happy with not getting where I wanted to get. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to get out of Purbright. They were still posting me, still adamant. And then the unit was going to wait for me to come back, take the guys on a training pre-deployment, the quals, and then finish that, and then drive to Purbright that weekend, pack up my room, and go to Purbright. A week before I was due to go, I had to ring the RCMO, which is a bloke called Captain Hook. Shay Hook was my sergeant major in. He was ex-Hereford. I had to ring up him as the RCMO for 10-6, and he got my post and stopped within about 2 hours. He was like, "There's a bloke signed off. He's not going to Purbright." I'd been ringing Glasgow and everything to get this to stop my posting, and nothing was getting stopped. And remember, you're not allowed to ring Glasgow. And I was like, I've signed off. I don't care. I did my resettlement. Went and did CP because that's what everyone did, close protection. And then I got out in 2000 and when was it? 2013 was my April the 18th, 2013 is when I finally got out. And we just had me and Cecily had our first child 2 months before that, Ellie. Okay, who just started today her grammar school year 8 today, which is a lovely surprise. So that was my army career. Got out then, did just short of 13 years, and funny enough, I got out at the best posting I ever had, and I wanted to stay there an extra year, but I met someone who was more important to me than the army.
How did you find the transition from army to civvy, like the resettlement packages?
I wasn't really civvy. I went to Afghan with an 8.
Well, yeah, fair enough. The army helped you leave, or did you not get involved in resettlement packages or anything like that?
Yeah, I did, and we can talk about that about CTP, and it's actually what I go on to later. How one for Northern Ireland, it's an absolute, it's just not fit for purpose for Northern Ireland,
especially anywhere. Never mind Northern Ireland, it's not fit for purpose.
No, it's slowly getting better, but there's loads more now with all other entities involved. Yeah. But yes, you're right. But
I mean, I can only speak from experience, and that was 12 years ago. Really.
Yeah, so about the same time, it was irrelevant to me because I was going out to do CP or PSD. Yeah. So it was resettlement. I was going out to go and obviously literally be with all squaddies again. So I found it easy. But one thing that I will go back to my childhood was the adaptability of moving. That was never a phase problem for me. Believe it or not, being institutionalized never was a problem for me, even though my whole life was in the institution. I know that's like a contradiction, but because of being an only child, moving around, and that adaptability, actually going away from something wasn't an alien concept and wasn't very difficult for me. If I'm lucky, I can understand how that institutionalized, but that really never bothered me. All my deployments were on my own, not as a unit. I'd fly to Iraq and Afghan as an individual, not as a unit deployment and stuff like that. So that was part and parcel to me, and not a problem. So I found that quite easy, if I'm honest. I'm lucky in that respect.
Yeah, I can see. I mean, I've experienced it the way every time I was deployed. I mean, apart from a couple of deployments where it was just a handful of us, it was the unit was going and stuff like that. And there is the scariness of change, where all of a sudden you're leaving the military and you're on your own.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like that didn't affect me until years later, and then it was. How can I explain it? It was explained to me by my counsellor that I never let go of the military, and it took 10, 12 years, or about nearly 12 years for that to kick in. And it's around, and it turns out, they were telling me, it's quite common for it can take that long for people to start developing issues with the mental health, with other factors and stuff like that. One of the things I was suffering from, it was almost like separation anxiety and not being able to close the box type of thing. And one of the things it was leaving the army, that I just walked away from it and didn't draw a line. You know what I mean? I was like still in the army, but not in the army type of thing. And that took me quite a while. Anyway, so we'll move on to your CP work in Afghan. So I've never done it. I've spoken to guys who have, and they loved it, some hated it. How did you find it, and how did you get into it?
Oh jeez, it took. So obviously,
Hang on, it stopped. Yeah. That's back
luckily,
on,
so the CP world. Luckily, who I worked with at Optag, Eddie, he was rifles. His brother was a country manager for Edinburgh International. Now, it took me a few months of absolutely getting to the point of a desperation that I'm going to get a gig, and then I got a contract with Edinburgh International. I went out to Kandahar, and we did sort of working for Supreme, who were the American company who did the fuel and food, the DFAC. So we had a contract there, and it was easy enough. It was a really easy gig, if I'm honest. Really easy. But about 3 weeks into it, we get called in to tell us that our wages are getting halved. And if we can stay on at that, or we can jump ship. So I was due to do 12 weeks on, 4 off. And then they asked me to extend, and I ended up doing 14 weeks. And at the end of that, I walked away. Because because you don't get paid on your time off. So your money, even though it sounds great when you're there, you then have to divide it between the month you're off to be not paid. I then walked from that. I wish I hadn't, though, because it's better to look for work while in work. And then I ended up being for 6 months trying to get a job in Iraq and get another job. And I got one in Iraq with GSI, which was, if ask anyone at the time, 14, was a terrible company run by Iraqis. Now, they paid on time. Blokes used to say, yeah, but they pay on time. That shouldn't be the basis of a good company. Yeah. So I did that for 2 years, PSD, as a team leader in Iraq, until our second child was due to be born, me and Cecily. So Sophia, Cecily was like, look, I want you to be home. And I wanted to be home, to be honest. I've been away on tours, been doing that. And the money, you see the writing on the wall. It was good. It's just, you're an armoured taxi. You couldn't fire your weapon in Iraq because you'd be arrested by the Iraqis. It's a bit of a fallacy having the rifle, to be honest. But, it paid the bills. I enjoyed being a contractor, but there's nothing fun and sexy about it, if I was honest.
Yeah, I mean, the few guys that I have interviewed who've done it have said, like, it's not all what's cracked up to be. And,
no,
it really isn't. I mean, I spoke to guys who worked in just the logistics side of it, and he did it for years, all over the place, Afghan, Iraq, Sudan, places like that. And it affected him later on because you're always vigilant, and you going from one environment into CP work, you probably didn't see that, there wasn't that much change. No, you're always like hyper vigilant, keeping your eye, the 10s, 20s, 5, 10s and all that.
Yeah.
Looking at the doors and everything like that, and it's going to have its toll on you in the end. And it does on a lot of people, but, I'm not saying it's going to happen to everyone. It doesn't. it's it's the mental health side again. We're not touching on that. We'll probably talk about it again a bit more. They don't get the support that they need. The guys who are going out and doing the CP work. I spoke to like Nick Dunn, who was one of the Chennai Six. Afterwards, he never got fucking any help at all. No, he's still not.
Who would have touched maritime security after that when you got shown literally that?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. And I mean, and there was one incident where I was nearly in jail because the company I worked for skimped so much. They wouldn't pay for an extra team to rotate when guys' passports have to get sent in to get their exit visas. So normally what should happen is when your passport's going to get your exit visa, in Iraq, you then don't leave the camp because you haven't got your passport. I said, yeah, you can just use a photocopy of your passport and say you're in. And then at this one checkpoint, I had an Iraqi special police officer asked to see it, and he started going ape and was about to grab me. My team, the Iraqi I had as part of the team, he couldn't do nothing. The only saving grace was the client I was escorting worked for the oil company, was Iraqi. Now, he lived in Sweden, but he literally could speak the language and just told. In that culture, it's not about, just their perception, who they are, that hierarchy, and just told him this bloke's police, he's the law. And this civvy told him what to do and to go away. And he did. And luckily, I wasn't in jail because of that client, and I had that client at that time. If I had the Russian client, because it was a Russian oil company that we used to protect and do, Lukoil, I would have been spending some time in jail, and they'd have to pay to get me out. But yes, it is. It's not a cracked up to be as everyone to be. It can be a very masculine and toxic environment.
Yeah.
So it did the CP, and then I stopped that in 2015, just before my second daughter was born.
So what was the next run on the ladder for you then after that?
Well, so I was in Northern Ireland, and I ended up becoming a custody detention officer in Musgrave custody. So working for the PSNI. We did that. To be honest, I saw more in there in Afghan than I did in Afghan and Iraq. Working in police custody, what a world! What the smell, the stink. But I was speaking to a lad, Chris Finn, a lad in Norwich who was running a thing called Viking Fitness, and he was talking about boot camp. Now, I'd stayed away from the PT world because I was like, well, I've done that. I've been a PTI. I was a PTI for, I did my continuation, so I become the All Arms. I ended up being a PTI for 9 years or whatever long. And I wasn't really interested in that. But as we got time, I was like, there's no military boot camps. And I remember BMF and all that was in the mainland. But obviously,
it was a byword.
Yeah, but none of that had taken off in Northern Ireland. So I was like, I could run a military boot camp. Now I'm very like that. I don't believe in the narrative. My wife's like, oh, Jay, a military boot camp, because she's Northern Irish. And she's like, well, I don't know about that, Jay. That, there's going to be problems. And I went, nah, we live in East Belfast. So I was going to start a boot camp. And I slowly started while I was working at Musgrave. I started taking clients on, all my first boot camp were all the girls from my daughter's nursery, free boot camp, and started doing proper. And if you've been in Northern Ireland, all the people listening, Stormont is the grounds of, obviously they'll know, is the buildings, and I started doing it all in the grounds there. I then was working as a custody, but I had an idea to start trampoline fitness classes at We Are Vertigo, which was the biggest trampoline park in Europe. So I started that, and then that's when I then quit. I went on a whim and I went, this is going to take off. They've got huge reach. Everyone's going to know about my boot camp, and I'm going to start up a boot group called Mercury Fitness, which Raw Signals is the Mercury, the message. Yeah. And so Mercury Fitness NI. So I left the police custody because the money was shocking, and I started my boot camp. For 2 years, I failed. And when I say failed, it was to the point of I had every good idea. I wasn't succeeding. I was coming home to see my wife. I was taking £5 here. I thought I'd have boot camps where I'm having 25, 30 people turning up, paying a £5 because it's a military boot camp, this, that, ever. It wasn't that. The trampoline fitness class, okay, didn't take off like I thought it would. 2 years of trying to make it work, looking at my wife going, I'm failing. I am failing massively. I'd come home and have nothing. She ended up, whereas when I was doing CP, she could take time off work. She had to go back to full time. What she was doing as the manager of the Ice Bowl, she was the breadwinner. I was not. But I was like, I can make this work. I know I can work. All my experience of adaptability and confidence and teaching ability, what I've been taught and all the courses in the army and while I was selling, that can be transferable. But I was going, what's going on here? What? And it wasn't until I had to take a job with one of the clients who ran a car company. So I ended up washing cars for him and taking all his cars for MOTs. Now he was a second-hand dealer in BMWs, Mercedes, Audi, so good range of cars. Craig McCormick, top bloke. Anyone wants cars in Northern Ireland, second-hand, auto queue, giving him a plug. Right, this bloke started giving me work, and I said, look, you need a bloke to do this permanently, and he took me on, and fair play to him. And do you know what? One of the best jobs I've had. I never went to work not looking forward to it. The cars weren't mine, so I didn't care if it failed the MOT. I didn't mind washing the cars. I got minimum wage, so it wasn't on anything particularly,
And
a
job's a job in the end, isn't it?
What we need, my wife saw me with some income coming in. Okay, we get to that point, and I still have my boot camp, and then we get to the point where she's like, "Are you going to bin that? Are you going to bin that?" And I was like, "No, I really want to do this." Still, I saw an ad, and it was these ads that said, "We can make your boot camp. We can give you high." I don't know if you've ever seen them. I don't know if it's ever come up. Fitness ad saying, "Do you want to transform your boot camp and earn high money?" Everyone always says they're rubbish. I booked in for him with the GTA boys, and they sat down and told me, "We'll work with you and we'll get you 40 clients at £300 a pop." Bearing in mind, I was charging £5 pay as you go or £30 a month to be in my boot camp.
Right, okay.
And I'm like, I go, "You can't do that." And he was like, "Yeah, we do. We'll show you how to do it." And I was like, "You remember that saying, civvy's paid to do this shit?" Right. And I said, he goes, "Right, this is the program." I said, "Do you want to do it?" I went, "Yeah." No, I do. And he went, "Right, it's £1,000 up front, and then you pay £5,000 over 5 weeks. You pay £1,000 a week back." And I was like, "I haven't got £1,000." And he was like, "Well, not a problem. You'll pay £8,000, and you won't start paying back until you earn £3,000. But you just pay £2,000 more because you haven't paid the £1,000 up front." And I was like, it must work, because he's not willing to give me a system, and for me to not be successful, to not pay him back.
Yeah.
So I was like, right. I went, all right, we'll do that. Now, I didn't tell my wife because I told her every good idea on the planet. I was starting the first residential boot camp, so they're trying to, you name it. I couldn't face telling my wife and watching her face just go, "Another one." Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I completely understand. She'd backed me so long, and I hadn't delivered. So I learned. I was doing this program. I was listening while washing cars at night, putting all. There's a lot of work to get the prep. Okay. To put all the things that my business wasn't doing and why I wasn't getting all the sales and leads in place. And then I was just going, "Where are you going?" "I'm off doing my consultation." So I had people booked into my ads. They built your ads and stuff like that. I ended up becoming the biggest boot camp in Ireland. I end up at one point having 120 full-time members. This system worked, and it transformed our fortunes, like to the point of we could be, we could breathe, we could do stuff, we could start, seeing a future, and not having despair. Luckily, one thing the army gave me was I had that self-belief that I'd be successful, that I would win. I haven't won yet, and I never will, but I'm going. And so went through that.
Keep striving. You got to keep striving.
Got to keep that next bit. But one of the things that I haven't mentioned, which was a huge catalyst just before this was changed my perspective on everything, was our third daughter. So I've got 4 daughters, by the way. Now I'm at my 4th daughter, ready to chop off my willy, so I don't have to have any more daughters. All right, because I couldn't hack it if I had any more. And our youngest daughter, Aria, was going through the pregnancy. Wife, I could always tell she was about to give birth. She come out in the sack, and that's amazing. But then we went to 7 nurses and a doctor in the room, and they put her on the little incubator to get oxygen.
Yeah.
But I was not panicking, and they were like, "We're just going to get an extra room," and that went on for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. And I'm like, starting to wear, and she says, "What's over?" I said, "We're okay." She's okay. And they said, "She's coming around. She's coming around oxygen." I was like, "Right, okay." But there's still 7 or 8 guys in the thing, and the atmospherics weren't quite right. And then they said, "Does Dad want to have a look at her?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do." So I went and looked at her, And I looked at her, and my first words were to the nurse and doctor, doesn't look like sisters, but they look like aliens when they're born, and tried to have a laugh, and there was no banter. And then I went away, and then I come back, and I looked at her face, and I went, does she look right? I went away, come back, looked at her again, her face must be swollen. They then said, is Mum going to see her? And I said, yeah, I'll carry her. And I brought Aria over, and my wife just looked at her and went, oh my God, she got Down syndrome. And then the doctor just walked over and went, what's Mummy's first thoughts? I nearly dragged him over the bed.
Hell.
What for? So my wife collapsed, lying down. If you could collapse, I could see someone just died. Absolute, giving birth, gas and air. Just saw her completely, world fall apart. Didn't have a clue about Down syndrome. And then trying to talk to her, and she just ignored them and looked at me and went, fix it, make it. And we're so in our careers, as we're always trained, no plan survives first contact. But if this happens, we're then going to then do a condor moment. We're then going to move on. We're then going to do this. We're then going to do that. There's always the next. You always have redundancies. And for the first time, I was like, I don't know what to do. And all I could say was, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. And I walked out of the room and I collapsed to my knees and cried. Absolutely cried, going, I've just been having a daughter born with Down syndrome. I've got a child with special needs. I don't know what to do. I've never had this. And first time ever on with Mum. Mum, just to let you know. That experience and what we went through in those early days, 5 days in, because it was the 12th weekend. I don't know if you know about Northern Ireland, and the 12th, July the 12th.
Yeah.
They have the bonfire. Because of that, we had to stay in the hospital for 5 days because they have to confirm by bloods, which we actually had gone said, but I was driving every day to the hospital, my wife in, just tears running down my face. Feeling sorry for myself, when ultimately I didn't have Down syndrome. So what am I being miserable for?
Yeah.
That comes on later, because so we went through that tough. You're grieving for the life your child never had. It's the strangest thing. You grieve for a life in a child you never, you dream. We all know our children won't, obviously, it's not always Rosie and Jim, and it's not always perfect. But at that point, you literally have just discarded a whole life away of what you minimum were going to expect or potentially could happen. Okay.
And even if you didn't think, even if people don't think that far ahead, it's just the shock, the unknown. It's not something everyone's experienced.
I've been shot at, I've been bombed, walked around IDs, had IDF coming in, rounds going around my ears, contacts, and I was more scared at that hour than anything I'd ever done in the army.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Without a doubt. But that little bundle of joy, that little ginger nut she is, and her progression and her development was utterly catalytic for me to grow and have and obviously as well to have the should we say, guts to go and do what I then did with the saying, yes, I'm going to do that program. As well as, even though with me, I had more on the line, so I needed to make sure I definitely was successful, because I now had 4 women, one who's obviously going to have complex needs. I need to support my wife and give her the ability. And that really set me off with that journey with the boot camp. So the boot camp, we did the boot camp, got to the boot camp, right? So doing really well. Sorry I went on that story. It's always part of the journey. And that's when I was approached by a lad called Sean Mealy. Do you know Sean? He'd be brilliant to have on your podcast. Sean is ex-Welsh Guard. He is the originator of the English, Welsh and Scottish Veteran Awards. Okay, really top bloke. And I got conned by, I know this is going to be awful, so if anyone has ever heard of a lad called Jay Jones, again, we won't say it unless it's true. Jay Jones, if anyone's listening to this who come across him, is a lad who conned loads of veterans, and he's a veteran himself, and a big accusation. But because of what happened between him and what was going on and in the fitness world, I ended up becoming friends with Sean. Sean then approached me and said, Jay, it was just before COVID this, how would you like, because I kept badgering why Northern Ireland didn't have a veteran awards, and he ended up going, why don't you do it? And it took me all 3 seconds to go, I'll do that. Well, what Sean really meant was, I don't want to touch Northern Ireland, you go and do it. You go and do it.
Fair enough.
So yeah, but I understood he had a lot on. He had 3 awards. He's doing loads. So I said, okay. Then I went about it, and I went and saw Gavin Robinson, the local MP, who was on the defence committee with the DUP at the time, and he had Johnny Mercer's number. So he was a direct contact for me to speak to Johnny. COVID then kicks in, so then I didn't run it until 2022. And then beginning of 2022, we went, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start Northern Irish Board. Now, let me tell you, I went through. You think Northern Ireland wants this? They did, but let me tell you, it was more difficult than I ever thought going to people to say I want to start a veteran awards. The amount of people say you can't do that here in Northern Ireland. Where in Northern Ireland, you can't be having a mess. You can't have a big formal do out in public, veterans medals, you name it, and stuff like that. And I went, why? And no one could give me an answer. But people would come. I was going to entities thinking,
yeah, it's just the preconception that half the country or half of Northern Ireland are going to try and fucking burn you down for doing it.
Pretty much. And then so I was going to entities, and they were like, they thought I was coming to them to ask them for permission. This is the problem here with it. There's one big problem in Northern Ireland. It's easier just to do your job and just say this is Northern Ireland and not do anything different than it is to actually go out and actually have to do things. Okay.
Yeah.
So people come and think I was coming for permission. And in the end, I had to go, I'm going ahead no matter what you say here. And in the end, they were like, right, we're going to have to go along. And obviously getting sponsors up and running and actually a brilliant bloke who helped me at the beginning and still does is a bloke called Kingsley Donaldson. So he's an ex-lieutenant colonel. He was in the RTR in Northern Irish bloke, brilliant bloke. If anyone listeners ever met him, he's a character. And he started putting me in connections to people and to get this off the ground. And my first ever veteran awards, I had 200 people in the Stormont Hotel. Johnny Mercer there as a guest speaker, and it was the day after he was put back in the cabinet by Rishi Sunak. And I picked him up at City Airport in my tuxedo, in my black Merc that had Mercury Fitness written on the side in orange writing, writing. Get in, because he was only half hour before it was due to start. Get him to Stormont Hotel, and for everyone to just go, this has never happened in Northern Ireland. This couldn't happen. So it was a success. Brilliant. Last year, I ended up having it in the second one in the Europa Hotel, which, if most people know, was at one point the most popular in Europe. And I did that for a strategic reason. I wanted to show the veteran community that we've moved on. It's a Wednesday night. I've got guys in mess dress. I've got serving reservists. I've got serving regulars. I've got loads of veterans. I had Chris Eaton Harris, the Secretary of State, there. I had 300 people having an amazing award. I had another girl you need to get on your podcast is Liz McConaughey, the Chinook chick.
Yeah, I think she's a bit podcasted out of
but she's a brilliant girl. I was chatting to her. She's going to be hosting this year's award. She was a guest last year. But anyway, last year on it, one of the things I looked at was when there's a massive, we're talking about CTP, and imagine what it's like in Northern Ireland where you do it in Aldi Grove, and then they never had a jobs fair in public until last year, right? Not saying a coincidence, but my veteran awards the year before, it hadn't been publicly booked, and all of a sudden, we now have job fair outside the wire, which it should be, okay?
Yeah.
But I looked and went, proper CTP is, it's only for you up to your post 2 years or pre 2 years if you've done your 22. What about all the veterans? There's 20 odd veteran companies in the mainland who do veteran recruitment. You've got Hire a Veteran, Job Oppo, you've got Forces Transition Group with John Stevenson, top bloke, I served with him as well. You've got Jean-Claude who does ex-mil recruitment, and you've got loads of others, yeah? Okay. Redeployable as well, there's another one. But their reach in Northern Ireland is almost to non-existent because it's Northern Ireland and no one knows the ground, the atmospherics on how to do it.
Yeah.
So I looked and went, well, I'm the bloke who set up the Veteran Awards. I'm now the trusted entity with veterans, and I've been engaging with businesses to get sponsors. Why don't I put on networking events? So last year I ran the first veteran networking events in public in Northern Ireland, and I had 2 of them, and I had 25 companies in a room, and where guys can just book in to come and engage and network. And then I had a meeting with a gentleman, Graham Given, and we had a chat. And he's got a business, and he had a revolving door, and we both had the same idea of what does Northern Ireland veteran community need that's not been provided, and that's where I started the business CTS, Connect Through Service. And it's so unique. It's different to all the others because this is a bridgeway network. I'm not a recruitment company. Okay. I've made a bridge because I'm a trusted entity and a filter. But what you've got is you've got a group of people who have a distrust for when they approach a company, whether they can explain their past service, because they're always worried, I'm going to be, looked upon, I won't get the job, or someone is going to know my details. I don't want them to know it. Okay. Now, we said Northern Ireland's further down the road than most people think, but the perception here is still dissident Republicans want to get them, when I'm going to be brutally honest, they don't. They couldn't care less. They were spending their time drug dealing or getting Pearson Eye. Okay. But veterans lived through the troubles here, so their lived experiences are ingrained in their head. I'm not going to tell them that any different, but what I am going to tell them is you're currently allowing someone to live rent-free in your head of how you can grow because you're worried about the past, thinking how many guys I know that haven't applied for a job which they could do because they're past, so they end up going for the bog standard security job, driving job, so they're not going to the potential they could be. So this is where I looked and went, what we need is a bridge where I get all the businesses signed up on one side, all the veterans signed up the other, and then the companies approach me and I just share the opportunities. But because they've signed up to me and they signed up to what I'm trying to deliver, they know they're invested and want to recruit from them. And there's never been a pathway. Now, it's not just veterans. So we looked at it and went, how do we be smarter? Because in Northern Ireland, everyone beats the same drum and wonders why they don't get a different outcome. So we included the police, the fire, and the ambulance, and we called everyone service leavers. Because when I'm then going to companies who are, the beauty of what we're doing is, if it's a governmental entity like CTP or it comes from RIFCO, or you've got Defence Relationship Management, companies are a bit sketchy because unless it's a large company, which it's in the mainland, so it doesn't really care so much. But if it's a company that's Northern Ireland, that it won't get backlash for supporting the British government or a British entity. But because I'm detracted as a limited company, it goes under the radar. So companies are like, we love this idea because it now gives us the ability to target a demographic, to give them opportunities, a part of their social value that they never ever could do in Northern Ireland. And I've only started this year, but this is where it's really starting to take off. So now I'm trying to get all the veterans to sign up, and the police. Also, the police. When I go to companies, I'm saying to them, we are promoting the fire service, the ambulance, the police, and the army. Who's going to be one to seen to go? And we don't support the police, ambulance, fire service. It's their own goal. So I did it. Now I want to support them because they have served. But I had to be tactically different, and this is where our minds think of it different, to go, how can I get the enemy? And it's not the enemy, but let's look at it in soldier terms. I've got to do the 7 questions to get my end goal, to complete my mission. So I have to get my Trojan horse to get companies on board for the greater good. Okay, good. And this is where I'm going. I'm also putting veterans as part of their diversity hire, because we make up with all the services, it's about 160,000. That's nearly 10% of the population of Northern Ireland.
Bloody hell, yeah.
Priority, but I'm going to them, we should be part of your diversity hire. So I'm using language that has been used so well by companies against them in a way. And it's honestly, but it's for the greater good. And companies are now getting on board with that because their social value is so high on their agenda. And it gives them a way to really get to a demographic they never could. We've got Hayes Recruitment who see the massive value in this and go, we want to get to these skill sets to put these guys in opportunities. So I'm now, as we're slowly getting companies on board, as well as today, I just actually launched the Blue Lights Awards in Northern Ireland, the NI Blue Lights Awards. So that's where I'm trying to change the narrative for service leavers and veterans in Northern Ireland. But the key thing is we need to get, and the message I try to do is, we have to change the narrative. Don't wait for them to do it, because they'll never change their view of you. You have to go out and go, no, well, this is what we're doing. This is what we bring to the party. You're going to have to accept this is the narrative, because this is the one we're going to deliver. I did nothing wrong. The trouble, blah, 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 which ultimately, yes, that did happen. But it doesn't matter. We're in today. We've got to really change the narrative. I'm not a one-man band in doing this, but I'm hoping I'm going to. But this is the way, if business change how their perception to veterans is, everything would change quicker than any parliamentary implementation. Because you've got two bigger movable forces in Northern Ireland. That one, yes, veterans, the other one, no, they'll stay there. So let business do it, and it will change the veterans' prospects far quicker. It would not be talking decades. We'll be talking a couple of years of them becoming the norm in recruitment, and this is what I'm slowly trying to do. So I end up becoming someone I never set out to be or do in Northern Ireland. Was the bloke who changed the narrative. Never in my life did I set out to do it. I know when we probably started to talk, people were like, I never didn't think that this is how this would take out. Some bloke who's a pub rat ends up, joining the Signals, does CP, gets a boot camp, does an award, and now tries to do a network to make veterans' lives better, and employment, not just employment, opportunities. Because of large numbers, I'm approaching companies to go, well, can you give us better insurance deals? Can you give us better? I've got mortgage support, pension support. Because I was one of the blokes. Have you heard of the? Have you heard about the pension transfer?
No, I mean I've seen some people talking about stuff like that on Facebook. I don't think it. Well, I hope it's not affected me. I'm on the old pension, I mean, I'm
No, but this you
I'm just turned 55.
Yeah, so I'm the 75. So I was on the 75 pension, but what people didn't know is you were able to transfer your pension out of the military, not to another governmental entity. You're allowed to transfer it to a SIP. And there was a company going round called Caledonian who were on my CP course, and this is Jen. 5,000 lads transferred their pensions, and they were ultimately conned. The MOD have allowed this to happen. This is going to come out. 5,000 guys. I was one of them. I transferred because what they told you they could do with it in the SIP was how much benefit, more money you'd get was meant to be amazing. It ended up being that the money. So for instance, my pot was 52 grand. I had when I done my just over under 13 years.
Yeah.
And 10 years down the line, it was sitting at 49. Right. Half the guys' pensions are in Malta right now. They cannot do nothing with it. So there's big companies at the minute doing cases. No one's getting sued. It's just they're going to the FCA, right? If your pension's in Malta, there's nothing you can do. If, like mine, you're lucky it was with options, which was in the mainland of such, you could win your case. This is a huge thing that no one knows about, the pensions. I can't remember what I got on this. You hate when you start talking thing and go, there's a reason why I went on this. We'll have to look back at it. But yeah, that was a massive one that's going on at the minute. People don't know about, which needs to be. I'm trying to help. So I've got my cousin's a pension specialist. He's now going out to see how we can help all the guys in Malta to be able to get their pensions back into the mainland and start growing again. But people don't know. So you had to have done it. You wouldn't have done it. You had to physically signed it away.
Yeah.
But that's going to come out.
I mean, I've seen things on Facebook about guys who were switched to the new pension without being told and stuff like that.
This is different. This
is
by
completely different.
Who transferred it. You find it was predominantly contractors like me who they were even meeting guys on the beach in Sri Lanka or the Maritime, just on the beach going, hey, do you know this? And stuff like that. And there's about 5,000 guys. There's a document about it. We're talking millions upon millions of pounds that this company made. And they weren't, and the reason I didn't realise they weren't registered in the UK, they're registered in Chile. But I was like, if the MOD will allow you to do it, it must be kosher. Because their pension's huge. It's a huge pension pot. But 2015, they stopped anyone allowing to do it. So 2015, no one could do it anymore after that.
So they must have known.
So, well, there must have been something known. But we'll come out and work. But yeah, I'm trying to help guys with that as well. So I'm gonna have a webinar in a couple of months' time for anyone who's that happened to so Gav can tell them what they can do and support. But this is what I'm trying to do: get that base support that we've never had. Yet we're a huge demographic that should be able to command them sort of perks. Companies want to have perks. You know, you're talking about a veteran. We're talking about 2 million people in the whole UK, somewhere served, and you're like, how is that not a powerful entity for banks? But yeah, so that's what I've done when I got out. This is what I'm trying to do. The future, change the narrative of veterans in Northern Ireland. So that was my journey.
And you know what? I'm like that. I'm just like listening. I'm like, it's like that. I'm like, it's cool. Yeah. Yeah. The thing what you touched on there, what I've discovered since doing these with veterans is that all of a sudden we're forgotten about again. Obviously, Iraq's over, Afghan's over. You know, there's not a lot going on apart from people going, you know, Estonia and the lads I've spoken to are serving abroad. You know, there's nothing really going on anymore. You know, that might change in the near future. You never know. But I think the veterans have been forgot about again. All of a sudden, you know, it's been put at the back of the mind. A lot of the veterans agencies have closed due to lack of funding. There's plenty out there, but it's getting people to them as well. You know, I was lucky that when I approached Up Courage, I went the NHS route to the doctor, sent straight to Up Courage. She just went, "Oh, you're in the army, weren't you?" I said, "Yeah." Poof, straight to Up Courage. Within a couple of weeks, I was seen by them. They couldn't deal with what I was suffering with or going through. Within a month, I was put onto a Veterans Association, East Durham's Veterans Association, fantastic. And I only had to wait a matter of, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks, and I was seeing a counsellor, you know, which I thought was amazing, you know, and I've been dealt with by them, great. But I've seen other guys are not getting help because they don't know what's out there, you know. We've just been forgot about again.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and you know, it's that old, it's the age old thing that, you know, we don't get spoke about, or we don't get talked about until we need it again. You know, when the army's needed, then it's needed. We're all heroes again, and then after, you know, it's happened time immemorial. It's been on, you know, since the beginning of time. You know, and it always will be. But I think we do need to push more to say, look, we're here. You know, we are useful. We are, like you said, there's like 2 million veterans in the UK. Whether we've got a voice or not, you know, and I don't want to seem political because I'm not, but we do deserve better than what we've been given, I think. You know, I mean, the Veterans Awards, and I mean, I didn't know they existed, to be honest. And I imagine most people who listen to this won't know what they are either, or what, you know, what the criteria is for people and stuff like that. Do you just want to give a quick, like, 5 minutes of that as well, please?
Yeah. So you got Veterans Awards CIC. That's Sean. So he covers the Welsh, English, Scottish. And the awards are to recognise veterans who've been successful in business and the community, and also companies that recognise veterans. So there's 13 categories and groups. So I recommend going and looking at his website, Facebook. Then I've got mine, Veteran Awards Ireland. So because I'm launching an Irish one down south as well, because there's loads of British veterans down south.
Yeah.
So my awards are open to the Irish Defence Force who live in Northern Ireland as well, because veterans not synonymous just to us, but it's a mirror image. So, you know, veterans, again, like I said, been successful. It's to showcase what we bring to society. We're not all, you know, broken, or we're not like can't anything. Guys really are a success story, but we have to show that, because, like you said, the forgotten. It's a bit like we're all like Gunny Highway from Heartbreak Ridge. Gunny, you should be in case and have on it only break in the case of emergency. You know, that is, you like you said there, the forgotten, but when they need us, that's about society. And do you know what? I understand it to a point. And I also will say that veterans can bring stuff on themselves as well. But not in the mental health expert. I'm talking about some guys not going out, and that's a bit like the institutionalism. How that needs to be done right is they get out and they just go, I've been handed free shit my whole time, really. Yes, I paid for accommodation and food, but it was cheap as chips. And
it's not your wages, you don't see it.
Yeah, and plus, you know, your Millionaires Weekend spunked it every beginning of every month, and then they get out into the big bills world and realise, actually, no, you have to pay for this, this, this. I think veterans should have perks for service, okay, but not complete live-off handouts. Whereas
I agree. Yeah, I
some
agree.
come in and go, I should be given everything on a plate and not have to do everything because I served. And then you find out they did 3 months in basic training and then they got kicked out. You know, it's not all like that, but we need to get out of a sick man culture in the respect of everything needs to be handed out to us and actually show our work. It's a big difference. So my business is I've not gone as charity. I've gone as a limited company because I wanted to stand on my 2 feet and not be reliant on governmental funding, which then means I am obedient to the government at whim. And secondly, when I was approaching companies going, you want access to us, look at me, look at what I've got as a successful business. They go, and I'm going, this is what you're getting. Right, okay, yes. I sometimes think that in the veteran community, we think everything has to be a charity. So you have to register a charity, you have to be a charity. And you know, I think that's something that we need to go, actually, no, go out on a limited company, go out on your feet, you can do it. Don't rely on them because it can be pulled away at any time, which we've seen. We've seen
Yeah, we've seen it. Yeah,
pulled away. So yeah, I really wanted to change, but that was my big thing in the veteran community. I think we can bring someone on ourselves. We should be supported. It shouldn't be as difficult as it is, but I only think mindset as well. Some guys is they need to think. Remember, everything should just be given to them. That's my personal experience.
No, I agree with you. I mean, like you say, some people do expect things free. You know,
Yeah.
it'd be nice. It would be nice.
But a perfect
You know,
example is
people whinge about stuff like that, but you know, life's not like that.
yeah, the awards. I've had people slobber about. I try to make them as cheap as I can for the awards a night. Okay, and it's around £90 a ticket. All right. I cannot do it any cheaper than that. It's a gala, high end, 3-course meal, wine, you name it, right? A night you'll never do, only do once a year, tuxedo, you name it. I can't do it cheaper than that. I can't. It's just, you know, I'm beholden to the prices. Unless you want a fish and chip supper in your Masonic hall, okay, I can't do it cheaper. And the amount of slobbering I get because I am charging. People say, I've had one boat go, I can't believe you're charging veterans. And I'm like, I'm one myself. But how do you think these events go on? And then I was like, I asked one and said, was the event what you thought? And he went, no, it was far grander than I ever thought, but still moaned about the price.
Yeah.
And I'm like, honestly, do you know what? And one thing I've learned on the awards, do you know who did the most moaning to me? So being Northern Ireland, and everyone will say, obviously, you've got nationalists who are not going to be pro-British forces. Do you know who the most? Do you know how many complaints I've had or any bad comments on social media from nationalists in Northern Ireland? How many do you reckon?
I'd say none.
Do you know how many I've had from veterans?
Come on, we can moan. We can moan.
But the thing is, I'm doing it from a good. I'm doing it generally great place. You know, I really am doing it from a good place, but I can't do it for free. I have to feed my own family, and I'm putting someone on that can be done and promotes veterans and change the narrative. Honestly, another example is to join CTS. What I'm doing, it's not just employment. I need everyone to join it. I charge £2.99 a month to be a member. Okay, 2 reasons. One, if you give someone away for free, no one cares about it. Okay.
Yeah.
2, I charge them so they care about it. Yes, it's only £2.99. It's less than a cost of coffee. Okay. Because I wasn't going to then again want to charge guys, but £2.99, they're paying a little amount. They go, I want to make sure I use that and utilize it and get value for it, so they use it. Because anything you pay for, anything you don't pay for and you get for free, you don't care about. Also, those £2.99s I build up helps me deliver and make a better service for them because I can wash my face. So veterans, yeah, that's the awards, and that's my gripe. You know, it's interesting as well as veterans should support each other. It's great they talk about stuff, and for instance, you put something on and then they don't do anything with it.
Yeah,
support it. You moan about it and you see it, go and support it. You have to.
You can see a bit of that. Yeah.
You know.
Right. That's been nearly 2 hours. That's longer than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, because I'm about to get my ass roasted by the wife.
Yeah, I kind of get that as well. Yeah. So we'll end it now.
and I deserve it. I'll be honest, because she knows I can talk for Britain.
Yeah. No, it's been, like I say, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. But I'll stop the recording now.
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I enjoyed recording it. If you could just hit the like button, and also if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell, that'd be great, because it'll help the channel grow. The more people will see it, the bigger it'll get, and the more guests I can get on, and the more people I can talk to. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, like I said. Look forward to the next one. Hopefully, it'll be out next week as normal. Bye-bye now.